Hey, happy Wednesday, and welcome to Draft for Upside. I'm Brewery Mark. With me is esports Chris Emmerich. How are you doing tonight, sir?
Yeah, man, getting pretty excited. For esports to start, the LOL's in the lobby. We've got a big day. I already told my wife I'm waking up at like 3 a.m., maybe 4 a.m. when it starts on Saturday. I'm going to get some special beers from a brewery close to here. I'm going to start drinking, watch the games till about 9, take a nap. Then, we got football. So we're going to cover the football slate today. So a little excited. Just actually peeked into the DraftKings offerings. I didn't realize that there was going to be a six-game offering with some pretty healthy contests if you don't want to play the three gamers. Lots of money to be won, and I don't think that these slates are very easy, to be quite honest.
No, they're gonna be pretty difficult, but yeah, like you said, I'm very excited about the game selection they put out there.
What I will tell you is I am doing a slow draft in a $500 entry LPL league right now. And it has been mind-numbingly slow. Like, we started this like 11 o'clock last night. Part of it's my fault. I took a couple edibles. I thought I was having like a heart attack or something. I don't know. So I couldn't fall asleep, but I finally fell asleep when it was my turn. And so I delayed it. But man, it's been almost as slow as the draft that we are doing that we started 12 hours ago and we're into round 3. Needless to say, I've been watching these two spreadsheets, just like I'm like 4 picks in or 6 picks into my LPL one that started last night.
Yeah, I think it's my pick right now too, and so at some point this show I will make my 2 picks. I get 2 in a row. I'm on the swing.
Why don't you make your picks right now? I'll throw this up in here so people can see where we're at right now. I'll share the screen, Chrome tab with there we go. Boom. So it's your turn. You make your picks, I'll make my pick. We'll let Adam know, and we probably won't have another pick on the show.
I don't know if anybody can see that or not. Man, so yeah, I'm having a tough time deciding here if the Seahawks are going to beat the Rams and who's going to win the Ravens-Titans game. And I say that because I need a quarterback.
You do, and I want you to take the best possible quarterback. I want you to punish Johnny Danger for not taking a quarterback and going, super heavy here in his wide receivers. Even doing that, though, I don't think that he ended with as good of a wide receiving tandem as yours here.
Yeah, I was very happy when I got both Diggs and Adams. I was hoping Josh Allen would get by you, but you grabbed him. I was hoping for that Allen-Diggs combo.
Yeah, I think when you look at this, you're looking, in a best-case scenario, Kansas City gets 3 games, right? I think in a best-case scenario, Buffalo gets 4 games, hopefully gets at least 3. So they're on par, but have more upside than like a Rodgers, than a Mahomes. Unless you see them getting bounced early. And I just think that they're rolling at this point, and I don't. The unfortunate thing is that they don't have a running game. So it's like, who do you pair with them, and when do you pair it? Like, Diggs was an obvious pick at that point. I was just hoping somehow that you did something weird and like Adams would come back to me after the wheel, but
All right, I got to make a decision here. It's a tough one. Man, I have a feeling the Titans are going to beat the Ravens. And I really like Seattle's chances. We're at Seattle. So I'm going to take a little bit of a gamble here, and I'm going to go with Russell Wilson.
All right, well, you got 2 picks, so who else are you going with?
Do I pair him or do I go for my running back? Let me think about that next one.
You went with Russell Wilson?
Yeah, Russell Wilson for sure. And let's move on the show a little bit, and we'll get back to this. I'll make my second pick here in a few minutes.
All right, cool. Well, I mean, I guess that's a good place as any to start. Let's stop sharing that right there.
So, hey, Chris, before we get going,
okay,
I am busting my cherry today on this drink. I am drinking my first ever hard seltzer.
Oh, wow. Okay. Which one did you get?
So it's just the Bud Light and appropriately black cherry.
I will tell you, my favorite ones have been the Bud Light Christmas editions, like the ginger and the peppermint. Leaps and bounds better than the other ones.
Yeah, everybody said the Bud Light ones were super good. My buddy Glenn came over the other day to help me with some barn work, and he brought them. So I'm giving it a shot. It's my first one.
The only thing that's bad about them for me is it makes me pee like quite a bit. They gotta run through you.
What are you drinking?
I have some 10-year rye Basil Hayden's.
Cheers.
Cheers.
It's not bad. It's not as sweet as I thought it would be.
Yeah, I mean, some of them are better than others. I think the mango ones are particularly pretty good. The watermelon truly is a good flavor. But like, if you can find the Bud Light Seltzer Holiday Edition, that's the ones to swoop. They were bountiful in Michigan when I was there, but I can't find them here in Virginia.
All right. So before I interrupted you, you wanted to start in on something?
Yeah, well, I mean, let's just start in. This is a 3-game slate. Let's start with the 4:00 game and the decision that you made to start Russell Wilson. We have a really low total game here. We have a Seattle team which has really struggled to produce offense for quite some time, and then a LA Rams team that is going to be a little bit different than what we've seen. This is a third time that these teams have played. Both of those times have been low-scoring defensive affairs, and to some extent, the game against the Rams for the Seahawks was where their offensive struggles kind of started and stemmed from. Johnny Danger has a hat that, is from his gut call that the Rams defense would be good that day. They were in fact good. I don't think any of us had any calls that were good aside from that week. But, what are your thoughts on this game? Is there any value? I mean, I think this is a game in both of them that could be really sneaky. It's going to be super contrarian, but I think that more often than not, this is one of the games that you're going to want to avoid. But on that 3-game slate, there's a lot of avoidable things, so you might have to play some pieces on here.
Yeah, and I think people will read this as a low-scoring defensive game, but this is the playoffs. I think they'll be taking a few more risks. It's in Seattle, which I like. I truly think this favors Seattle. I don't think it will by any means be a shootout. Have we heard if Goff is playing?
I don't believe that he is. I think it's Wolford.
Yeah, so that really has me leaning towards Seattle for the win, but of course we're talking fantasy and where to score points.
Yeah, I think when you look at this, there are kind of two picks for me that kind of stand out above everybody else. The first one is going to be Cam Akers. He's just going to have that backfield to himself, 21 carries, 15, 29, 21 the last 4 games. How effective he'll be in this game with that sprained ankle is another question that we're going to have. But we saw Wolford run the ball quite a bit last week, as I recall. I'm going to go just double check that and see how many rushing attempts that he had. He had 6 for 56 yards, so certainly does have some value. He's not cheap enough that I think that you can really look at that at 6,200, especially with the Seattle defense that has been pretty good the second half of the season. So aside from Cam Akers, though, I think the other guy that I'm Kind of interested in here is Tyler Lockett. I just wonder, though, what the Tyler Lockett kind of ownership is going to look like on a 3-game and a 6-game slate, where in the 6-game he is 100 less than DK Metcalf, but I think is he the same thing? Okay, on the 3-game, for some reason I thought he was a little bit more expensive, but I just wonder where the ownership is going to lie. I mean, are we going to see what was predominantly throughout the season the case, where DK Metcalf was the guy that was the highest owned, or is this going to be a situation where, coming off of that, multiple touchdown game for Tyler Lockett, his ownership's going to increase?
Yeah, this is one of the hardest games for me to read. In the 3-game slate, Lockett is 200 more than Metcalf.
Okay, yeah, and so I don't know why this. Oh, okay, that's why. So if I go to this, it really, that's what I thought. So I mean, I wonder about. I guess I'm gonna have to pull something else up.
I think in the 6-game slate, Seattle's receivers are going to be fairly low owned, considering the defense they're going up against. So they're good contrarian plays in the 6-game slate. But in the 3-game slate, well, I mean, they could still be up there, but you're talking, you have Diggs and Godwin and Woods and Brown and Beasley, so they might in the 3-game probably middle of the road, I would think.
Yeah, even in the 6-game slate, they're more expensive. So I don't know why my information is pulling this incorrectly. So I'm just gonna have to send an email there.
Was that your modeling? Yeah,
it's got it pulled in differently, but okay. It's just like, what can I trust now? I have no idea. Yeah, I think that's the important thing is to look at what the ownership is going to be there. I think if Tyler Lockett's going to be a low owned, or even DK Metcalf, I just think DK Metcalf on a consistent basis pulled ownership. But when you look at the overall stats for both of these guys, they were pretty similar. DK Metcalf had more yards and bigger yardage, obviously less catches, more yards. But Tyler Lockett had more catches, less yards. I mean, I think it was like 100 catches, 1,000 yards versus 80 catches, 1,300 yards. They were pretty equal. And as Danger pointed out last week, one of the unique things about Tyler Lockett is it seemed like when he did blow up and he did have a matchup that he could exploit, or was exploiting in that particular day, he scored multiple touchdowns on several different occasions. And so that's why I really, really do like him as a GPP play. And I'll probably have an obnoxious amount of him. Provided his ownership is where I suspect it should be.
Yeah, they had almost the exact same amount of yards. They had the same amount of touchdowns, 10 each. Yeah, but I'm with you. I think this is a case where Lockett. I think Russ trusts Lockett more. He looks for Lockett a little bit more, and I think that will get in. To Danger's point, I think Lockett has a little bit more upside, because when he gets locked into him, it just feels like that multiple touchdown game's coming.
Yeah, and when we look at let's take a look at their games against the Rams this year. I mean, I think both of them were pretty bad, but I mean, Metcalf had 6 receptions on 8 targets for 59 yards. And then in the first one, 4-2-28, nothing exciting there. Whereas Lockett, on the other hand, was probably pretty similar, 5-3-44, and then 9-5-66. So they did a pretty good job of limiting both of those receivers, which is just another reason why they are a good GPP play. I mean, it's been one of the things that I think has been the hardest thing to kind of look at yourself and do. I mean, I always played GPPs, but I think I played them more like cash. I was looking for the consistency with a ceiling, but now it's trying to find those guys that could pop off, that have that ability to do it, but specifically looking at the guys that aren't doing it or haven't done it, that have that really high ceiling but have the low floor, because those are the guys that people are going to go away from. So I think Cam Akers, I think Tyler Lockett, and to some extent DK Metcalf are all very, very good plays on the 3-game, and even more so on the 6-game slate.
I agree.
I think Robert Woods, and Cooper Kupp, if he's back, both deserve some attention. But I'm not super high on either of them.
Man, I do not know who to take for my running back. Anyways, yeah. All right, so back to this 3-game slate. Let's kind of go look at the individual matchups. So we pretty much talked about Seattle. So are there any players you like on the Rams side of the ball?
Not really. I think if you're looking for an inexpensive receiver, Josh Reynolds is somebody that could be a little interesting. I think Cooper Kupp is supposed to come back. So I guess the thing to look at, and again, the problem is that you're looking with a different quarterback, but Josh Reynolds had 10 targets twice this year. Both of them were against the Seattle Seahawks. Like why that is, I don't know. We know that the secondary for Seattle was pretty exploitable, but the corners kind of shared up. So I don't know, maybe it was the slot corner or something in that sense where Reynolds was playing that they tried to attack. But with Wolford in there, I think that the offense is going to look woeful. And if you think LA wins this game, I think you think that LA wins this game and it's a low scoring affair, and it might be a low scoring affair even if they lose, but the team that's more likely to score points, even though both of these are semi unlikely in my opinion, is going to be the Seattle Seahawks. So I'm probably going to steer clear of most Rams.
Yeah, I have the same feeling, especially with the backup quarterback. Yeah, so let's move on.
Let's tackle the other game that I think is less exciting, and that's going to be that Tampa Bay Washington football.
That's right where I was going. Yeah.
So Ron Rivera has come out and said that they may have some additional packages worked out for Tyler Heineke, that he may sub in for Alex Smith. I don't think anybody was playing Alex Smith in the first place. I think he's looked progressively worse as the season has gone on, and I certainly think that the wear and tear on that injury that he had has certainly shown, and there's been some pretty significant limitations that he's had. When I look at this on the Washington football side of things, I'd love to go to Antonio Gibson. The problem for me is that Tampa Bay defense, while it's been showing some cracks in terms of what it's been allowing to wide receivers, it's been pretty stout to running backs. I mean, I'm going to give you these numbers. These date back to the 15th against the Panthers, and that's November 15th. 10.9, 5.6, 10.10, 28.3, 11.4, 14.7, and 23.7. Those are just not numbers that I'm super excited about finding or putting a running back on a team that I think will more than likely be trailing in this game. So I'm probably out on most pieces of this offense. I think that you can make a case for J.D. McKissick, but I just think Alex Smith limits this, especially the way that he's been playing in this condition that he's in.
Yeah, and I was very sad when I saw our buddy Logan Thomas is the most expensive tight end on the 3-game slate, and I love him. He's done us well all season long. I don't know if I can go there in this matchup, and at that price, I can come down to Higbee or even take a flyer on Knox or Doyle and save $1,500.
Yeah, I think the reason that we continually went to Logan Thomas was the production versus the price. It was what the value that he offered. He was consistently under 3,500, was seeing heavy amounts of targets. The production that he was getting and the efficiency on those targets was actually pretty poor, and that's why his price stayed where it was. He had a couple of those really big games where they were more outliers than they were anything else because he was seeing that type of opportunity. But when you see that type of opportunity, you should cash in on it. Is he good? I think that he is. I think he's in a tough situation in a team that has a lot of promise. But just for fantasy, again, I don't have a lot of interest in that team. Now, on the other side of things, the Washington defense is one that has been something that we've gone to a lot as well. But again, they played 6 games against the NFC East. They played 6 games against losing teams. So those games that the defense just played a lot better. They never gave up massive numbers per se from a fantasy perspective, but they did give up. They had a stretch, there in the middle of the season. And at the beginning of the season, when they were playing tougher competition, and even to some extent when they played the Lions, Bengals, Cowboys, and a depleted Pittsburgh team, where they gave up a lot of points to wide receivers. So I'm probably not running a running back out there. They were really good against the run, but against wide receivers, that's where their weakness was. And that just so happens to be the strength of this Tampa Bay team.
Yeah. And they haven't face this kind of competition. I mean, you're talking Brady and 3 number 1 wide receivers playing against you. And as good as Washington's been, I don't know how they can cover all those guys. Plus, you have Gronk, who's gotten better and better over the season. Brady likes Cameron Brate a lot, and we all know he's a solid tight end. So, yeah, I don't see playing Washington's defense here either. I kind of lean towards I really like Tampa's defense here as a defensive pick on the slate. To your point, I don't think Alex Smith is looking all that great from a passing game perspective, and Tampa loves stopping the run.
Yeah, I think that's a good read. I think Tampa's going to have the most popular defense. I think the contrarian pick would be if you think that if you're not going to put a lot of Seattle wide receivers on your team or not going to bank on that offense, I think you can go to the Rams, especially in the 3-game slate. If that's what we're talking about, the 6 game is going to have a little more question to it. But from that wide receiving core, it looks like Mike Evans is going to play. Give me a second because I have no idea if these prices are correct. So let me go over to this screen here. So Mike Evans, I guess, is going to play, but I wonder to what capacity they run him out there. Antonio Brown seems like he's kind of found his way into this offense again. And being the cheapest of the 3, depending on what the ownership is, I think I'm the most interested in Antonio Brown in this matchup. Some of the radio here in the Washington, D.C. area had been talking about how it's going to be really cold on Saturday night, and some of these guys from Tampa might not be used to it. Obviously they were saying that Tom Brady's used to it, so that's not going to be a concern. But I think Antonio Brown is another guy that's used to this. Gronk's used to this. Antonio Brown played in Pittsburgh, played in Michigan. So these are guys that are used to the cold. I don't think that that's going to be a problem. I like Antonio Brown. I think you can go with Chris Godwin. And, I mean, if you're putting a couple of these guys in there, I think Tom Brady's definitely the second most interesting quarterback and will be the second most owned, or maybe he'll be the most owned for that reason. Obviously, the guy in the next game that we're going to talk about is probably going to have a fair amount of ownership.
Yeah, and let's just roll there. I think we've covered this pretty good. So I think we all agree the premier matchup in this 3-game slate on Saturday is Indianapolis at Buffalo. I clicked on defenses, and I understand why the Bills is the number 1 defense, but I don't think I can play the Bills defense against this Indy offense. Especially Indy has looked better as the year has gone on, and Jonathan Taylor is coming on very strong.
Yeah, I mean, the thought, though, is that Buffalo's defense, while it had a stretch there that was bad, I mean, dating back to the last time they lost. Let's say this. Okay, so they lost that game against the Chiefs. They looked bad there, but then they beat the Jets, Patriots, and Seahawks, gave up a fair amount of points to the Seahawks, gave up that 32 to Arizona, but then it was 17, 24, 15, 19, 9, and 26. And I don't think that the 26 that they gave up to the Dolphins is indicative of what they put up. So they're putting up a low amount of points. They're getting a couple sacks, forcing turnovers throughout that point, and actually having some defensive touchdowns. So that's kind of the thought process there. They have given up a couple big games to running backs throughout the year. So this is a game where you can possibly go to a Jonathan Taylor. For me, outside of Diggs and Allen, which are guys that I think are going to be, almost must-haves in the 3 game and possibly even into that 6 game, I think Nyheim Hines is one of the more interesting plays as he's been semi-phased out, hasn't really had that upside that he had earlier in the year, but he's half the price of Taylor. And if this game gets out of control like the Buffalo offense has been able to do thus far or recently, we might not see a lot of Jonathan Taylor. And there is probably this leftover belief that this Indianapolis defense is good. But quite frankly, they have not been good against wide receivers. They've been good against the run for, to some extent, but to wide receivers, man, they have given up tons of points with the exception of 2 weeks to the Ravens and Titans. They've been one of the worst teams in regards to that. So, 52 and 59 in the last 2 weeks. Diggs, John Brown, Gabe Davis, Isaiah McKenzie. Pair Josh Allen with whoever you want.
Yeah. And I see where you're coming with Nyheim Hines. I'm still in favor of Jonathan Taylor here. If there is a weak point in the Buffalo defense, it is the run game. And Jonathan Taylor just seems to be right now peaking at the perfect time. Let me check his targets really good before I speak out my ass, but it feels like he's getting way more targets in the passing game. 2, 4, 0, and 1. Okay, so he had a little stretch, 2, 5, 0, 2. So he did have a little stretch there where he's getting a few more targets in the game. But man, he's getting 20 attempts, 16 attempts, 18 attempts. Last game, 30 attempts. That was Jacksonville, but and the other thing is he's scoring touchdowns like crazy.
Yeah. My fear is that this Buffalo team gets out in front and is able to put up a 2-score lead, and then are you still running the ball with Jonathan Taylor at that point? I think
sure.
You can get away from that, and this Indianapolis team has kept a lot of the games close, especially recently, or themselves have gotten on it in front. Any game that they lost, like the Titans game was the only one that was really kind of out of control. Aside from that, it's been a long time since we were down quite a bit. So, and maybe that's something that you look at. This is like what, a 6.5 point line right now. Maybe because they keep that game close, maybe you bet on the Colts, but I think that I'm probably going to fade Taylor, even though from a projection standpoint in the running back position, he's leaps and bounds above everybody else. But again, it just depends on what other people are looking at, especially on a 3-game or 6-game slate. You're looking to get a little bit different. And I think his ability to have a big game is still there, but I think his ability to fail and fail really bad is there as well.
Yeah. And from a lineup building strategy standpoint, he's priced $2,000 above any other running back on the 3-game slate. And this is a slate that has a lot of wide receivers to play, a lot of high-end wide receivers to play. So, I can see fading Jonathan Taylor, saving that $2,000 and rostering a much better wide receiver core.
Oh, I know why my prices were wrong. I've got to delete this tweet now. An idiot. I had to set the FanDuel. Man. Delete. All right. Well, that's why. All right. Here we go. There they are. I knew I looked at these and they were different. Man, I feel like an idiot.
Well, while we're talking about running backs here in the Indy Buffalo game, any love at all for Singletary or Zach Moss? It seems like they're pretty much the same player nowadays, and at least the last 4 or 5 weeks just seems to be the Josh Allen show.
No, I mean, I think you can. I think Dawson Knox is probably a little bit more interesting in terms of an additional player that you can play. But from a running back standpoint, probably not. I mean,
yeah, they're just not running the ball right now. At week 13, Singletary had 18 carries, but since then, 7, 8, 10, 3. And let me really quick pull up Zach Moss.
he's averaging about 13 right now. I mean, last week they pulled him out early, but about 13 carries.
Yeah, week 14, 15, 16, 13, 13, and 12. Single digits 3 games before that. So he's getting a few more looks. But, I mean, even when they get down to the goal line, Josh Allen will run the ball or dump it off at the same time.
Yeah, I think what you see from Buffalo versus other teams is when they get it on the goal lines, other teams sometimes will try 2 or 3 times to get it in with designed runs before they go to a pass. Buffalo sometimes will go 1 time. If it doesn't work, they immediately abandon that running back's opportunity. So it just makes it difficult to go to one of the 2 of those guys. If I was leaning towards one of them, it's definitely going to be
Moss.
Yeah, Zach Moss.
Yeah, he seems to get the first crack at the goal line.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right, so wide receivers, I think Diggs is an obvious one. He'll probably be the most owned in slate. He's actually not priced that much higher than the other top receivers on the slate. He's at 7,700. You have Godwin at 7,000, Lockett at 6,900. In this game in particular, we know Ty has been on fire lately, mostly touchdowns. Beasley got hurt, didn't play last week, but it looks like he's going to play this week. Oh, well, no practice on Wednesday, so we don't know yet. John Brown came back, scored a touchdown. Were you falling on receivers on Buffalo or Indy?
Yeah, I'm more interested in John Brown, especially if Cole Beasley is back. I mean, if Cole Beasley is back, I want John Brown. My concern, I guess, is more with Gabriel Davis, who I think is still a really good play, but what kind of role he has in the offense with John Brown back, and if Cole Beasley is playing. We've seen kind of like one or the 2 of them out for a consistent basis, and Gabe Davis has carved in a really nice role for himself. I mean, he's playing almost the entirety of the snaps, dating back 1, 2, 3, like 6 games. So he's interesting at 4K, and I think he's worth a GPP flyer. I think Cole Beasley is the one that I'm kind of ruling out regardless. If he plays, I definitely don't want him. And unfortunately, it's not going to be I think a unique take in some ways, because people just don't play Cole Beasley. And if you can get an opportunity not to, you're just not. The only sneaky guy I think that we haven't talked about is maybe Cam Sims. Cam Sims is a guy that has gotten quite a few targets from Alex Smith when he's played. This is for Washington. He hasn't done a whole heck of a lot with it, hasn't found the end zone since October. So, I mean, his upside's not necessarily there, but I mean, 8 and 9 targets prior to the last week of the season.
So on the Indy side, we know Ty, and then you come down to Zach Pascal and Michael Pittman. They're part of the offense. They're on the field all the time. And they're priced pretty cheap, $3,700, $3,500 respectively. Any love for those 2 receivers, at least on maybe a contrarian play or a cheap play to try and fit in someone higher up?
Yeah, Zach Pascal would be where I lean versus the 2 of them. He's a little bit more expensive, but he has done more recently. And remember, he started off the season pretty hot, but got hurt, I think. Am I thinking this wrong? Maybe I am. I'm not sure. It looks like he had some targets there. But, yeah, recently he's been able to find the end zone, just do a little bit more with the targets. I think you can go with either of them. They're not distinguishably different than each other.
Any chance Indy can win this game?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it is the NFL, right?
Yeah. I mean, while we're on this, are you going to make your second pick here?
We're
35 minutes in, Mark. This is why this draft has taken 10 hours.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and let me just look one more time really quick. I'm not feeling these running backs, and I think I can just pick up scraps later. Let me just look really quick. It's gone. I don't think he'll advance past the first round. Won't pass the first round. Yeah, of the running backs that are still out there, I don't see anything special about any of them who I personally think will make it past the first round. I'm going to say Seattle wins, so I'm going to go for the pairing. I'm going to take Lockett.
All right. Got you with Lockett. You are all done drafting receivers at this point. It's coming back to me, and I'm going to take Rojo. Ronald Jones.
Yep, I like it. He was the one I was looking at.
Yeah, I figured. So let's go ahead and tag Adam in this. Adam, it is your pick. All right. So are we ready to kind of go into Sunday's games?
Yeah. Let's get there. Any final thoughts on the 3 Saturday games?
No, nothing left.
All right. Let me pull up the slate on DraftKings here. Oh, that one. There we go. All right. Where do you want to start with? Baltimore, Tennessee, Chicago, New Orleans, Cleveland, Pittsburgh.
You pick.
Let's just go in time order. Baltimore at Tennessee. I also think this is the hardest game for me to pick personally. I think they're both good teams and tough teams. I'm leaning towards Tennessee to win here if Derrick Henry can run the ball on Baltimore's defense.
Yeah, and I think he can. I guess my biggest concern with Derrick Henry, and I think I'm probably going to fade him. I don't know. I think that he looked super tired at the end of the last game. I mean, he ran the ball 35 times. They were tough runs, 250 yards. That's the most by a long shot. Now has to turn around and come and play against a Baltimore team that, granted he got 130 yards against the last time they ran. I don't know. I think this Baltimore passing attack is performing at a higher level than it did for a brief period of time. And this Tennessee defense is really bad. I kind of like the Ravens in this game. And if you like the Ravens in this game, I think fading Derrick Henry is one of the ways to go. We've seen him been ultimately phased out and at his price. He needs to be the focal point to cash in. I mean, even 130 yards, a touchdown, that's not going to get you there. That's 22 points. On a 3-game slate, it's a little different. On a 6-game slate, I don't think that's the case. So I don't know. I think you can certainly play him. I think he's a fine play, but I think there's a lot of ways that he fails here.
Yeah, and like you said, 9,200 is his salary, so he's got to have a pretty big game to make that salary. When you can you can drop down 1,300 and get Kamara, or you can drop down over 3,000 and get Nick Chubb. So, yeah, it's a little tough to roster him. I think he's a good fade in GPPs for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the obvious play here is going to be if Alvin Kamara is out, Latavius Murray is going to be in, and he's going to be the insta chalk as a result.
Right. Yeah.
Now, if he is chalky, I think it makes it even easier to get away from Derrick Henry, because there will be people that just go to Derrick Henry. As a byproduct, if you got a cheap running back, you can put it next to him. But we saw, a couple other running backs that are on this slate kind of really break out towards the end of the season, much like Jonathan Taylor. We kind of saw that breakout with J.K. Dobbins, and I wish I had kind of stayed with him. But he was getting those carries. He was just really close. He was getting the touchdowns like Jonathan Taylor. I mean, he scored in almost like the last 5 or 6 games, scored twice in week 17, including that 72-yard run. But he's been breaking those type of runs every single week that he's played. I mean, he had a 44-yard run early in the season, 34, 28, 30, 25, 72. Those are his long runs for certain games. So, he's always the threat to break it. He's obviously the best or running back in that corps. So I don't expect a lot of ownership to Mark Ingram. Don't think you need to. You could get really cute and go to Gus Edwards, but you're really hoping for a touchdown. But I really think that if Baltimore gets ahead, which I think that they absolutely can through the air, J.K. Dobbins is going to be a guy that's going to run the ball quite a bit, and I'm super interested in him.
Yep, I really like him too. He's getting all the carries in Baltimore, and since week 11, double-digit carries the entire time, and he scored in every one of those games. So he is peaking at the right time. They figured out how to use him, how to balance him and Lamar. I think he's a great play.
Additionally, this Tennessee defense, which has been absolutely atrocious against the pass and allowing points to wide receivers, has been pretty bad against running backs too. I mean, if you go back, let's go all the way back to the Bengals game, which is the beginning of November. 33, 19, 37, 19, 26, 27, 21, 25, 41, and 21 points allowed to running backs in the DK format. And that's a lot. At price that Dobbins is there, even if he's ceding some of his points that are allowed there to Gus Edwards, which he is, he certainly can make value. Now, look, this isn't a slate where we're looking for guys to hit value on a 3-game slate in the same way that we are in a 9 or 10-game slate, because with 3 games, there's limited options, and not every one of your players might hit value to that 3 or 4x. So you're kind of looking for raw points in some ways. And I think J.K. Dobbins is a good play. I think Baltimore kind of wins this game, but I wouldn't be surprised either way. But it probably is going to be a little bit of a high scoring affair. And on this Baltimore side of things, I'm even kind of interested in going to Marquise Brown. He's 5,400. He has been blowing it up. Again, we're not looking for that 6, 7x. 3 or 4 will be more than sufficient at 5,400. I love it,
Yeah, and that's a good segue to the receivers. If Danger was on, he'd be, singing the praises of Hollywood Brown. We know he's struggled most of the season, but again, he's peaking at the right time. I don't know if it was just an injury, his sophomore slump, what it was, but it seems like right now he's doing much better, and he's getting touchdowns. They're looking for him in the end zone, which it didn't seem like they were earlier in the season.
Yeah, I mean, look, there were a lot of passes that were overthrown or poorly attempted to him. There were a lot of passes that he dropped that were properly thrown. And again, he's not like lighting the world on fire. I mean, he's basically 3xing again. If this was a 9 or 10 game slate, he's probably not playable at 5,400. But because it's a 3-game slate or a 6-game slate, and there are some expensive people that you're trying to fit in, whether it be Derrick Henry, whether you're on the 6-game slate and you're trying to play Josh Allen's and Diggs, and a couple of these other guys that you might be looking at, he makes a fine play on this particular day.
So the highest priced receiver on this slate is A.J. Brown. Now we know Tennessee is a Derrick Henry running team, but Tannehill's had some big games. A.J. Brown's had a few big games. But looking at his numbers, the last 2 weeks he had high targets, but mid-season it was a little lower. Is it another case of timing? He's coming out at the right moment. Is he worth playing at that price?
Yeah, I mean, he's absolutely worth playing at that price. I mean, when we were talking about guys that have that high low and just have that enormous ceiling, he's one of those guys, 34, 30, 27, 25, 23, 30, 22, 21. These are some massive games. And again, I'm going to go back to it. You're not necessarily looking for that 3 or 4X all the time on these type of slates. What you're looking for is, in some cases, raw points. And look, if he scores 17 points, but no other wide receiver in the slate scores more than 14, irregardless of what that value is, he's probably the best play. So I love playing AJ Brown. The Ravens have this reputation of being a great defensive team, and while they have played well defensively, they've been beatable through the air, even as recently as week 16. 17, not so much, but Cincinnati wasn't so good. But yeah, I love him. I love Corey Davis. It's just sometimes playing those more expensive guys, especially in these smaller slates, that just doesn't feel like he's as good of a point per dollar play as some of the other guys, makes him a better play overall because less people are inclined to go to him, and they'd much rather take a $2,200 discount and go to a guy like Corey Davis, who has very, very similar numbers. Again, that's just something that you have to monitor. If the ownerships come out and Corey Davis is going to be far and above, way more owned than AJ Brown, that makes him an even better play. If AJ Brown, from a name standpoint and production in the last couple of weeks, ends up getting more of that ownership or similar, then yeah, you take the discount down to Corey Davis. This tandem right now is no different to me than Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. I think they both have pretty equal abilities to blow up. I think they have, in a good way and in a bad way. I'd rather take the guy that has the lower ownership, regardless of price. Yeah.
All right. Any final thoughts on Baltimore to Tennessee? I guess we didn't talk about Lamar or Tannehill. Is this I think Lamar is a great play every week. Is this a cash game, run Lamar naked? That's what I've been doing all season long and winning in cash.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely can. I mean, I think Mark Andrews is pretty cheap, but for what he can bring, but he's more expensive than a lot of guys. I think that let's take a look at something in Lamar's case. He just hasn't been. So here's the problem with, if you're taking Lamar and you're expecting some large production from him, which you are, but you've seen the production that J.K. Dobbins has put out there. He's taken a lot of those rushing touchdowns, right? So there's not as many opportunities for Lamar to score from a rushing standpoint, which is optimal if you're running him by himself. So in this case, Lamar has thrown for 2 or more touchdowns the last 5 weeks. 2 of those weeks or 4 out of the last 5 weeks, 2 or 3. So he's throwing the ball to somebody. It's just who he's throwing it to. Is this going to be a game where he throws 2 passes to Dez Bryant, one of which is a touchdown, and Dez Bryant is not viable, or it's going to be 2 touchdowns to, Marquise Brown and Mark Andrews? So that's the decision that you have to make. I almost don't like the Lamar Jackson naked play at all. Certainly in cash, it's a little more feasible, but who are you prioritizing over this Baltimore team? We're going to get into 2 other games that have, some pretty good defenses in them. And I don't know. I like the pieces in this game, especially against this Tennessee defense, a lot more than I'm going to like, for example, Allen Robinson against fucking New Orleans. God damn it, Allen Robinson. I don't know. I don't know what happened last week. I don't know what Allen Robinson did to Mitchell Trubisky, why he had 2 or 3 targets the entire game. I mean, literally, if he scores like 8 or 9 points, I have a much better Sunday. But just sitting there in the cash line, a handful of points out, and the 555 on FanDuel is just gross.
All right, well, let's roll into the next game. You brought up A-Rob. So Chicago at New Orleans. We know Allen Robinson. He's the number 2 priced receiver on the slate. He had a tough going in Green Bay. Only 2 receptions on 5 targets. Do you think that was more of Trubisky? Was that more of Green Bay's secondary? And can he bounce back against New Orleans?
Yeah, just give me a second here. I'm on the clock right now. I've got to make 2 picks here, and somebody totally took the guy that I was hoping. I think I'm going to take a little cube, and then.
Well, I'll start. Allen Robinson is a premier wide receiver for sure. He's one of the best on this Sunday slate. However, New Orleans defense has been much better than anybody thought it would be this year. And I think they're a little under the radar still. And I don't trust Trubisky at all in a big game on the road. So I will have some lineups with Allen Robinson in them, and I will definitely have a Chicago stack because I'm going to stack every game. But he's not at the top of my wide receiver list.
No, I mean, that's fair. I mean, Trubisky at his price and what he can do is still an interesting play. But, yeah, I mean, I think you can go to a guy like kind of Darnell Mooney, who's just been getting enormous amounts of targets, isn't going to have the primary coverage. So if you're going to play a piece out of the Chicago team, he's probably one of my favorite ones. In terms of, you know, the guy that's been the most popular play for Chicago over the last couple of weeks has been David Montgomery. And what I will tell you, and this is surprising to me because there was this belief, at least that I held, that New Orleans was super good against the run and limiting production, and that was the case. I mean, there was a span of time there, 7 different weeks where they had less than 15 points allowed to running back. But over the last 4 weeks, it's been 35, 24, 24, and 11 to the Panthers. We'll throw that out. But, you know, they did give up some big games recently. David Montgomery, I have no idea what his price is, $6,900. You know, it's a respectable price. But I'd probably rather have like a Nick Chubb for $6,700 and, you know, pair that with like a J.K. Dobbins. I think that's, I don't know. Again, like some of these plays on a 3-game slate are so dependent on ownership. If David Montgomery is slated to be pretty highly owned, then yeah, I don't want any part of him. But if he's going to be low owned, then certainly I'd love to take a guy that has the type of upside that he does and has been playing as efficiently as he has recently.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's a particularly great running back, but man, he's on a hot streak right now. I unfortunately did not take advantage of it at all on DraftKings the last couple of weeks. And I, like you said, I'll look at ownership later, but my first instinct is not to play him against New Orleans. You get Dobbins at $300 less. Kareem Hunt hasn't been the best, but he's only at $4,800, and we got to see what happens with Kamara with Murray. So
I think that's going to have a pretty big impact. But I mean, just looking back on this, even these games where they were getting kind of beaten and pretty handily, they were still running the ball quite a bit. I guess they weren't being I mean, I don't know. He got the ball 22 times last week, 23, 32. Again, it's going to come out to ownership. I don't think that this is a matchup that's not exploitable. I think we could definitely play him. I'm kind of I don't think that there's a lot of wide receiving options. I'm kind of ready to go the next game if you are.
Yeah, let me close this out here. Wait, we didn't talk about New Orleans. Anything in New Orleans you're playing? Kamara, obviously, if he's playing, but
I mean, Kamara might be playing, Michael Thomas might be playing, so it's really difficult to kind of assess what this defense or what this offense is going to be and who you're going to play until we kind of know what's going on.
Yeah, so that in that case, tune in. We're gonna have a first sip on Saturday morning and Sunday morning this week. So tune in, and we'll give you the latest injury reports heading into these playoff slates. So let's move on to Cleveland at Pittsburgh. I don't know what to think about Pittsburgh. They started off hot. They have a great record. Last few weeks of the season, it didn't seem like they had a clue of what they were doing. And Cleveland, on the other hand, seemed to get better and better as the season went on, and they got players back. I'm kind of riding the Cleveland train here. I really like Nick Chubb. I'm sure he'll be chalk because he had such a great finish this season. And but you know what? I'm going to have a little bit more of Baker Mayfield than I think of the field. Even though Pittsburgh's passing defense is ranked first, I just kind of like it. I like the way he's using Hooper. I like the way he's using Landry, and they have a few other targets in there, and they have Hunt. Chubb's caught a few balls, but he's mostly a runner. But I like the balance they have going in their offense right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. I definitely want a piece of Landry. Like I said, if we're in good weather conditions, and I don't know what the weather is going to be like in Pittsburgh on that day, he's a guy that I definitely want to go, and attack. I think Deontay Johnson's going to be highly owned in both slates, and kind of rightfully so. He gets such a huge target share. Definitely you can get a piece of Claypool and Juju and any part of this wide receiving core. I think to some extent, you could go back to something that has worked throughout the year and worked in short slates for different teams, but just stack an entire team. And I'm not talking like, 2 or 3. I'm talking about like, I believe there was a 3-game slate where Buffalo, I think it was like a Saturday, Sunday, or like a Saturday slate. I don't know. It was earlier in the year. And I think six out of the 9 players were on Buffalo for the winning lineup. And, it doesn't go that way quite frequently, but when you're playing these 3-game slates with $1 million to first and that many different entries, you have to get different and suboptimal sometimes to have a unique lineup that can score more than other lineups. And sometimes if all of these games are really low scoring and Pittsburgh just hangs a ton on this Cleveland team, which could happen, we don't know what kind of situation they're going to be in with COVID. If other people test positive, they're not going to have their head coach. And, that could be just a situation that is, completely, collapse for this Cleveland team.
Very true. Again, COVID, this is going to be an interesting playoff slate because we've seen COVID ravage a few locker rooms and position groups throughout the regular season. I'm very curious if that happens in the playoffs and what the NFL actually does about it. I would be pissed if my team lost all of its quarterbacks in a playoff game.
Yeah, but what can you do?
No, I get it. It's just it's going to be an interesting thing.
Yeah, this is almost like a situation where you got to tell your guys just like we're in the playoffs right now. Like you just can't be doing anything. You just can't risk it at this point. But you look at the price on some of these guys, like a Claypool at 5,200. Really had a big game last week, but I think that was more a byproduct of the other guys not playing necessarily as much. He still only played 35 of 59, whereas Deontay Johnson was out there for 58. So I guess maybe Mason Rudolph likes Claypool more. I don't know.
You actually called it on first sip. You said take Claypool, he's going to score, and he did.
Yeah. I was like, Claypool's the guy that I want on this team, and I guess it didn't really work out the way that I thought it would. From a result standpoint, it's one of those things where you kind of take the guy that's going to be the lowest owned and the least probable to do that, but still has that realistic chance to score multiple touchdowns, and every one of these wide receivers does. Deontay is the most likely to score the most points just based on that target share. But on any given week, he could get hurt, he could get phased out, he could drop 2 or 3 balls, and then all of a sudden Juju and Claypool are guys that emerge as a result. So those are the thought processes that you have to try and win these GPPs, because look, if all of the chalk hits, everybody knows what the chalk is. Everybody's going to play the chalk. And if everybody plays the chalk, you're splitting that $1 million, 250 ways, which is still nice. Don't get me wrong. But it's definitely not the same as splitting it amongst yourself or 2 or 3 other people.
All right. Any love for Big Ben?
No, I mean, you can do it if you're going to put it multiple passer or pass catchers with it. I think the interesting kind of way to approach the 6-game slate would be, stacking a game like this. Danger like stacking that late game so he has hope through the first 5, only to be crushed by a low-scoring interdivisional matchup where they've already played 2 times. And that's the other thing with this game here is that they've already played 2 times, like LA and Seattle have played 2 times. I think I didn't Chicago and New Orleans play once, and Baltimore and Tennessee. So we're really only getting 2 unique games here, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, you're right.
But once a team plays another team the first time, it's typically that second game is lower scoring. So you may see that on that Baltimore, Tennessee, and the Chicago, New Orleans. Not that the Chicago, New Orleans 26-23 game was a high-scoring affair, but we may really see some, really low-scoring games. And I think the 2 ways that I'm going to approach this is stacking all the late games on the 6-game slate and stacking just that first game. I'm going to have a nice screenshot after Buffalo and Indianapolis play, but those are kind of my thoughts.
Yeah, no, and I like those thoughts. I'm right with you. I haven't started building my lineups yet, but God, I'm excited. I love the playoffs. I love these 3-game slates. I love the 6-game. I'm so happy they put the 6-game slate in. And I don't know. The NFL should kind of stick with this format of only one wild card team, or only one team that gets a bye, have the extra wild card in. I really like it. I think it's more exciting as a fan.
Yeah, well, and it's not just that they have the 6-game slate, but they have 6 games, and there's actually money to be won. Like these are good contests.
Yeah,
I haven't looked at the rake or anything like that, so I don't know how that looks. Which I'm doing right now. I mean, this is obviously not going to be good. 15%.
Yeah, and they didn't overprice everything either. You have a $15 $50K game. You have a $10 $200K first place. Oh no, it's PGA. Sorry. You have the Millionaire Maker is only $25. And then they have a couple of nice. Here's a $3 $750K prize pool. They got some nice games that'll bring in some casual players.
Yeah, and I guess they have if you're looking at higher stakes, there are some, like the single entry SPY is $100, 5,000 first. There's only 600 players. Top 10 get 40%. First place gets 10%. It's a decent payout with a 10% rake. They don't have a lot of contests besides that. I mean, for a lower dollar kind of entry, you got a $20 3-entry max. That's 15% rake, which is just going to happen on these lower entries. But you're looking at 235 people that you're playing against. First place is 400. So there's some good contests. Certainly not as good for this 6 game, but there are a couple options.
Absolutely. All right. Any final thoughts on this NFL wild card?
No, I think we've covered it.
So this weekend, if you missed it yesterday, we introduced our new podcast, In the Cup. PGA starts up this week, starts up Thursday in Maui. It's a unique 3:00 tee off time, so you get primetime golf. It's the first of 29 consecutive PGA events that we're going to be able to talk about this year. Super excited about that. NHL starts up next week. NBA has been going on. I know you've been playing a lot of that, Chris. And I think so. League of Legends starts up here soon too, correct?
Yep, Saturday.
So I'm excited about that too. I was a casual player last year. I kept watching your articles. I kept analyzing your lineups afterwards. Won a few bucks here or there with your advice. So I think this year I might play it a little bit more.
Yeah, this opening weekend is going to be a little weird until we get a couple different slates, but I think the LPL starts on the 9th, LCK starts on the 13th, so we should get the tandem slates between the two. And then LCS starts the lock-in tournament on the 15th, and then I believe the LEC starts the week after.
Yeah, and then how long do those run? So is it pretty consistent for a couple months or?
Yeah, I think the playoffs and everything finishes for the spring split in late March, early April for both of them. And then I think they'll have a month or two off. It was a little different last year because a lot of them took a month off because of COVID, and so they were extended out. There was less of a break between spring and summer.
Awesome. So, so look for some esports content. Check us out. We're at Draft for Upside on Facebook and YouTube. You can also catch us on fantasysportsblueprint.com, Facebook, Twitter. We're all over the place now. We're going to be starting a few other cool things that we'll announce next week. Any final thoughts before we sign off, Chris?
No, it's just get different. That's the way to win. I mean, a lot of these are all playoff teams. These all have people on the playoff teams that are able to, produce for you and have big games, and that's why they've gotten there. But just think differently, put some guys in there, take some chances, understand that you're going to lose, embrace the variance, and hopefully we can get another takedown here. I mean, we're going to get some takedowns in esports. That's just going to happen. But in NFL, NBA, some of these other sports, it's a lot harder because you're playing much bigger contests, and the likelihood of you winning is so much harder to do than some of these others. So
yeah, absolutely. So cheers and good luck. I'm excited for this weekend, and we'll talk soon. And again, catch us Saturday morning and Sunday morning. We'll be doing First Sip, just a quick half-hour show to update you on those playoff slates. For Chris Emmerich, I am Brewery Mark, and we will see you later.